Tonight we have an individual who is known literally around the globe. He appears in tens of millions of living rooms, hotel rooms, offices, and electronic devices every week, and hundreds of millions of them over the year. He is so prolific all over the planet that Santa Claus actually goes to him to say, "How do you do this? You're doing it much more efficiently than I am." And of course, I'm talking about Dr. Abderrahim Foukara. Dr. Foukara is Washington, D.C.'s bureau chief of what is now the world's most viewed television network. It surpasses CNN. It surpasses NBC, Fox Networks, BBC, and of course, I'm speaking about Al Jazeera. Dr. Foukara has been its Washington, D.C.'s bureau chief since 2006. So most of you weren't even born yet. But he is much better known as the one leading host on the network's anchor of Al Jazeera's flagship program, Min Washington. And you all know what that means, and if you don't, you should. From Washington, all right? He also anchors with a steady hand much of Al Jazeera's breaking news coverage from the U.S. Dr. Foukara is fair, but he pulls no punches. He is frank and well-informed presenter of all things America to the Arab-speaking world. Abderrahim hails from Marrakesh, Morocco. After his studies, Dr. Foukara joined the BBC World Service. He later relocated to Boston, where he worked for both the BBC and our beloved National Public Radio. Dr. Foukara is also a longtime participant in our educational programs here at the National Council, which we are so thankful for. He participates in the summer internship programs, which Sarah described so aptly, as he has been a speaker there and is always so a little inside. During our summer intern programs, when we have speakers, we have such wonderful high caliber speakers, but I don't know if they know that they're all being graded by the students. And Dr. Foukara always came out as most popular, most popular, most popular, most popular. He has always been part of our U.S. Model Arab League program as well. Dr. Foukara, you are a humble, you are soft-spoken, and yet you provide invaluable service and a much-needed wisdom to the Arab-American relationship. I can think of no better way individual to help us make sense of Washington, D.C. for the Arab world and the Arab world for Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Foukara. So as he's making his way, it's taking extra time because as you all out there can see, this table is like the table that ate Detroit. It started out as a table of 20 for our distinguished guests, our excellencies, and just amazingly important people. But then all of a sudden, as life has it, certain people start saying, yes, I'd be happy to come, I'll attend, and then all of a sudden it's this domino effect that we just can't control, and it grew from 20 to 60, and that's just a testament to this organization. And we thank you for that, and we thank for all of you who made this possible. Dr. Foukara, please.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, what a welcome. I would be speechless if I wasn't a journalist. Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed guests, greetings to you all. It's such a great privilege for me to address you tonight as the United States and the rest of the world stand on the cusp of a new phase, an incoming US presidency, a new phase with yet unknown, but more than likely, consequential implications for the US, the Arab region, and well beyond. I have a few words of recognition and gratitude, but I would like to precede them with a few words about my job as a journalist and my personal background from the Arab region. For all its complexities, covering the United States can be a unique privilege, which allows one to witness the complexities of American life and, in my case, to translate the American political system and experience to a foreign audience by finding the right words and images to do so. But like a lot of privileges in life, being such a unique position to carry out this exercise comes with a challenge. US-based Arab journalists often struggle to find their professional comfort zone. On the one hand, their job is to report on a fascinating and open political system where freedom of the press, despite its challenges, is highly valued and often jealously guarded. Americans have celebrated Veterans Day this week, another opportunity for them to remember the sacrifices their soldiers had made together with millions of Arab and Muslim comrades in arms since World War I, to preserve freedoms, including freedom of the press. Part of the job of US-based journalists is also to report on the workings of a superpower, which remains the dream destination of many people from the Arab world, even as it continues to be perceived by millions of them as having often been unfair in dealing with an issue close to Arab and Muslim hearts, the issue of Palestine. But more of that a little bit later. I'm very grateful to the National Council on US-Arab Relations for having extended to me this great privilege of addressing you here tonight. I must thank in particular the Council's Vice President, Pat Mancino. I've always found in him great enthusiasm and professional support. I must also reiterate my thanks to the Council's former President and CEO, Dr. John Duke Anthony. I say reiterate because he'd hosted me on occasions past. Dr. Anthony is widely known for his deep understanding of Arab politics, culture, and history, and for his solid command of the various aspects of US-Arab relations. The first time he invited me to address the Council many moons ago, he asked me to make it from the head, but also from the heart. I still appreciate that request after all these years, Dr. Anthony. Last but not least, I would like to say a few words about the current President and CEO of the Council, Delano Roosevelt. In addition to extending to me the privilege of addressing this gathering tonight, he and I have a little unique common denominator. I'm from Morocco, and it's said that his grandfather, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, experienced something of a miraculous escape in Morocco in 1943. The story goes that as he prepared to meet Winston Churchill and other world leaders in the Moroccan city of Casablanca that year, the Germans intercepted the message about the historic summit, but thought that Casablanca was La Casa Blanca, Spanish for the White House in Washington, D.C. Needless to say, what the Germans could have done to the summit, given that the Moroccan city of Casablanca, unlike the White House in Washington, D.C., was well within their bombing reach. The moral of the story here is that fate and history have their own tricks which can elude the control of humans, even powerful humans. Talking of powerful humans, one of them is getting ready to take control of La Casa Blanca in Washington for the second time. Incoming President Donald Trump. While we still don't know for sure how his politics or how his policies will affect US-Arab relations across the board, the past is often prelude. We know, for example, how President Trump dealt with the issue of Israel-Palestine in the context of the long history of ups and downs in those relations. I will eclectically cite a few here. The first country to recognize the independence of the United States was an Arab one, my own, Morocco. The newly independent America fought its first naval war abroad off the coast of Libya. Millions of Arabs and Muslim soldiers fought with the Allies in World War II. The US supported the independence of several Arab countries from French and British rule. It also recognized the establishment of the State of Israel under President Roosevelt after much political humming and hawing. The 9/11 attacks in New York and Washington killed thousands, leading to the invasion of Afghanistan, then Iraq, with huge numbers killed there too. Former President Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and President Joe Biden declared rock-solid US commitment to Israel's security, particularly since the 7th of October 2023 Hamas attack. Millions of Arabs and non-Arabs worldwide perceive the US as complicit in the killing of tens of thousands of Gazan civilians, including women and children, despite the Biden administration vehemently rejecting that. Random as it may be, the list of bright and grim spots in US-Arab relations reflects, for good or bad, the historically intractable and complex nature of those relations. From the point of view of Arab feelings and perceptions, and as we know, perceptions can be reality, Israel-Palestine is one of the issues which have persistently and the longest plagued US-Arab relations to date. Since the 7th of October attack, which resulted in the killing of 1,200 Israelis and the taking of over 250 hostages of Israeli and other nationalities, the images of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians, including children killed by the Israeli military campaign in Gaza, public opinion in many Arab countries cast a very dark cloud of skepticism on the Biden administration's motivations and intentions. Skepticism which makes the administration's talk about all lives being equal dangerously hollow to many an Arab ear. Worse, it tarnishes the credibility in the eyes of many Arabs, credibility of one of the most powerful and relevant documents in US history, the Declaration of Independence, which says that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's a legacy the incoming Trump administration will inherit, although we don't know yet what it will make of it, whether it will deal with it as such or otherwise. Mark Twain is known to have said that history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. There are Arabs today who are convinced history will repeat itself with President Donald Trump's handling of the issue of Israel-Palestine. But there are also Arabs who hope there won't be any repeats or rhymes at all. A hope which may seem, realistically speaking, like a tall order. But again, history is known to keep tricks up its sleeve. It goes without saying that the advent of a new US administration has always been accompanied by both trepidation and hope. An additional layer of complexity in the Arab relationship is that different Arab governments tend to have different trepidations and entertain different hopes vis-à-vis a new US administration, Donald Trump's no exception. There was a time when Arab popular sentiment used to be expressly unanimous across the region in negatively perceiving US policy on Palestine. More recently, we've seen more protests over Israel's Gaza war in some Arab countries than in others. But it's safe to say the extent of civilian casualties in Gaza, particularly among children, has shocked and angered a lot of people in the Arab world and well beyond, including here in the United States. Until relatively recently, American support for Israel had remained virtually unanimous since Roosevelt, who recognized the establishment of Israel, although he had not been completely deaf to Arab concerns about Palestine. In 1942, President Roosevelt addressed the peoples of the Maghreb in particular, and of the Arab and Muslim worlds in general, in a proclamation he issued as allied armies with millions of Muslim soldiers fighting alongside them on various fronts were able to stop Hitler's forces at Al Alamein in Egypt. Part of the proclamation said, "Praise be unto the only God, in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, O ye Muslims, O ye beloved sons of the Maghreb, may the blessing of God be upon you. This is a great day for you and us, for all the sons of Adam who love freedom. Our numbers are as the leaves on the forest trees and the grains of sand in the sea." The point I'm trying to make here is that it is hard to get some sort of good glimpse of the future of US-Arab relations without engaging in a little back to the future exercise. History can be an eye-opener, whether there are thousands of years of it, as in the case of the Arab world, or only about 250 years, as in the case of these powerful and dynamic United States of America. Both sides' histories are filled with the tragedies of war and its implications. War, as we all know, has accompanied humans throughout their history. It has often shaped and reshaped history, and in many cases, geography too. It has been championed by millions of people who answered its call at various stages of human history. But it has also been opposed by millions of others who see it as a generator of unscalable human misery and loss, leading to Pyrrhic victory in the best case scenarios. Opponents of war, including the current ones in the Middle East, see justice and peace as the alternative to war and find validation in the words of the Chinese philosopher Lao Tse. Some 3,000 years ago, Tse said that even in victory, there is no beauty, and those who say it is beautiful will not succeed in their ambition to rule the world, and victory will have to be accompanied by the wailing of death and mourning. As powerful as those words may be, I know that they have not always stopped all wars, but maybe they have stopped at least some wars. October 7th drew waves of condemnation of Hamas, and support for Israel triggered new waves of Islamophobia in the West. And you can be sure where Islamophobia lives in the West, is also where anti-Semitism lives in the West. As Israel launched its Gaza offensive and began to see horrendous death and destruction in Gaza, we also began to see widespread protests in the Arab world, Europe, and the United States, and beyond. We also began to hear vociferous criticism of the Biden administration and to hear more about the new weapons and technology used by various actors in the Middle East. The notion of justice for the Palestinians to correct a historical injustice has taken hold in various parts of the Arab world. That is so despite the more recent Abraham Accords, for example, which was seen by the first Trump administration as a new tool to break the region out of its intractable history. They have also been seen by many in the Arab world and elsewhere as a means to sideline Palestinians, and therefore as having contributed to the mindset which culminated in a chain of events leading up to the 7th of October 2023. One of the striking developments of the issue of Israel-Palestine since October 7th and throughout the 13 months of massive death and destruction is how it has seeped into the dynamics and consciousness of US politics. Arab American opposition to the Biden administration's approach to the war became just one element in a wide range of communities, including many young and liberal Jewish Americans who also oppose it. Incidentally, the diversity of people opposed to the war and to the literally ironclad support the Biden White House has lent to Israel has had a triple effect. On the one hand, it has angered many Americans who support Israel and think that the 7th of October justifies anything the Israelis do in Gaza. But this diversity has also become a stereotype buster, as it seems to undercut any perception in the Arab world and elsewhere that all Americans support the war or the killing of Gazan civilians. Domestically, the diversity of opposition to the war has lost the Democratic Party vital support among Arab Americans and other voting blocs. And by so doing, it has also challenged the mantra that Americans always vote with their pockets. Many Americans who'd put their name and futures on the line in anti-war protest have voted with what many of them describe as their moral compass, whether their critics and opinion polls acknowledge it or not. It cannot be overlooked that Americans have a long tradition of opposing war, even to their own detriment. During the Vietnam War, for example, Crosby, Stills, Nash captured and immortalized this tradition in their eponymous song, 4 Killed in Ohio, when the army killed 4 protesters against the Vietnam War in that state. What could the next 4 years of President Donald Trump hold for the issue of Israel-Palestine? The temptation to express pessimism, to use an understatement, is quite widespread in many parts of the Arab world. Trump's election pledges to end wars notwithstanding have not always generated sure optimism there. Some of the appointments he's already announced for his new administration have already led many Arabs to find validation in their pessimism. But there's also an irony here. President Trump has built a reputation for being difficult to predict, a characteristic for which he was often criticized by many. It is that same characteristic, and this is the irony, that same characteristic which is leading some Arabs to hope he would use his unpredictability with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Are they clutching at straws? Hard to tell, but I'm sure we will find out soon. As I begin to wind down these remarks, And as Arabs find it difficult to resist the lure of poetry in dealing with life, allow me to quote An-Nabigh al-Dhubyani, an amazing pre-Islamic poet who addressed his loved one Umayma in these two verses of dark sadness but stunning beauty. كليني لهم يا أميمة ناصب وليل أقاسيه بطيء الكواكب تطاول حتى قلت ليس بمنقض وليس الذي يرعى النجوم بآئب. Leave me, O Umayma, to irrelievable pain and a night of slow-moving stars, a night so long it feels without end, with stars whose shepherd is not coming back to lead them away. Poetic beauty can get lost in translation, but I hope you give me some credit. At least I didn't translate Casablanca as the White House. I started this talk about US-Arab relations with history, so let me conclude with it. The United States and the Arab world are tied together with an unusual umbilical cord. In 1492, two pivotal world events took place. One, Granada, the last Muslim kingdom in Spain, fell, ending over 700 years of Muslim rule there, with huge numbers of Muslims and Jews subjected to the Inquisition or expelled to places like North Africa and Turkey. To many of them, paradise was lost, to use John Milton's image of Adam falling from grace. Also in 1942, Christopher Columbus led his famous expedition to the New World, funded by money confiscated from Spain's Muslims and Jews, and guided by the astrolabe, a naval GPS invented by ancient Muslims. Columbus paved the way for the English pilgrims to arrive in New England, landing on the Plymouth Rock and the Aborigines, as Mark Twain would iconistically quip. By the way, it is hard to always ascertain the extent of truth, the truth of what happened to Native Americans at that time, because unlike today, there were no TVs or social media. But there's one thing that we know for sure. In time, for many, the New World became paradise regained, with Christians, Jews, Muslims, and others setting up a unique society and system of government with amazing outcomes and achievements in every field. It would be another amazing feather in America's cap to do something good for all nations of the Middle East, if that's possible. Then the world can find reason to repeat with Shakespeare's Hamlet, "What a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god." I thank you very much for being here tonight. And I thank the National Council on US-Arab Relations again for this amazing opportunity to translate the mood of many Arabs at this crossroads in US-Arab relations. I pray for better times for us and for future generations in the United States, in the Arab world, and in any other world. Thank you and good night.